You're listening to Honey and Hustle, a video podcast that inspires the dreamers, creators, and hustlers to make a business from their passions. I'm Angela Hollowell, and I'm a visual storyteller based in Durham, North Carolina. I sit down with creative entrepreneurs, nonprofit founders, and small business owners as they share their stories, the lessons they've learned throughout their careers, and how they've worked to make a positive impact. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming here today. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and hang out with me and talk to me a little bit about your journey and, the business that you've built for yourself. So for people who don't know and who are watching right now, Carolyn is an incredible DEI leader and thought leader and writer and author and just really important voice in this space right now. So can you tell me a little bit about your corporate experience working as kind of that minority in the workplace and how that kind of really informed your decision to kind of say, okay, I'm ready to go out on my own and do my own thing?
Yeah, I mean, Angela, when you and I have talked about this of like where I've been in corporate spaces since the early 90s. But most recently, around the height of George Floyd, I was working in corporate for a large pharmaceutical company and was doing very awesome work, or at least I thought I was, and really working at that C-suite senior level, senior leader level. And what happened when the height of George Floyd happened, the new roles of diversity, equity, and inclusion was coming along and oh gosh, we need to do something now. And being at that level and being in those meetings, one day I went in and attended a meeting, and the CHRO really gave this white person, the Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer position. And I just looked dumbfounded. I was like, this can't be happening after I've been doing this work and was doing this work before DEI became this buzzword that we know it as now. And I went home and I called 3 people. And I asked them would they allow me to be homeless, and they said no. I went to my favorite nursery, this garden that I go to in Durham, and I sat in nature for 3 days during that time as well, until they closed, of course. And I, on Monday morning, I typed up my resignation letter and resigned. And I felt the sense of relief after then, because I knew that these corporate spaces for me didn't work, no matter how much work I did. So it led me to consulting and starting my own business, and not just around DEI specifically, but taking all that I've known and learned, my skills and experience in the nonprofit sector, as well as in finance and investments, and really just kind of bringing that all in as an HR leader and integrating DEI into these organizations through, a better lens than more of a surface level, or these surface level initiatives that organizations tend to take. So that's what led me to that, and that's been about 2.5 years. But was doing some of this work on the side, pretty much about 4 or 5 years. I had some clients that I will always work with from an HR standpoint. So when the height of George Floyd happened in 2020, the organizations that I was working with, my clients, we were already moving into those directions. And so that's what led me to think about my business, how I wanted to take this approach to this work, how I wanted to work with those that made the decisions, because I felt that starting at the ground, and not that there's anything wrong with that, I just believe that change happens at the leadership level. So my work is rooted around working with senior leaders and those that make decisions, specifically CEOs and other chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officers who need that guidance of like, how do I develop this business plan, right? Or how do I get them to buy in into what I want to do? And then creating these safe spaces for CEOs or senior leaders, I'm going to call them in this place, to really have a safe space to talk and to process what this change that is getting ready to happen in their organization. So it's kind of like I'm the psychologist. At the same time, I'm giving some concrete tools and resources to guide their organizations through DEI.
Yeah, yeah. So you touched on a couple different things in your journey that we're going to try to pick apart here very carefully. But the first one being, and just like when we were talking about this previously, before I even invited you on the show, was what stuck out to me was like you went in nature for a little bit. And you're like, okay, like I need to maybe get outside. One, get outside of my own head and think objectively, but also just get my hands in some dirt and just like really like do something different and have that connection with the earth and stay grounded in my decision-making process. And then once you made that decision, you stuck with it, you followed through, and you're like, yes, like this is, I did the right thing. So I think there's a lot of people who, especially now over the pandemic, they're just tired. You know, they're just like, man, like my job has not treated me well, or maybe like they got this big relief from working remotely and now their job is wanting them back in the office, and they're like, why? Like, why are they, doing that? I think there's just a lot of, miscommunication between what workers and employers want and, what really is going to set their company up for success and for a diverse and inclusive workspace. So can you talk to me and talk to people who are listening now a little bit about what it means to be at that pivotal moment where you're making big career decisions, where you've put in the time, you put in the years, you've put in the hours, and you're like, okay, like maybe I need to do something a little different now.
Yeah, I think one of the things, there are a lot of things, right? And there are steps to, I can't say that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to it, but one of the things that has helped me is that I've just removed so many people and things around me so that I can have better clarity. And so every morning, I'll share this, every morning, even before I leave my house or even coming here today to meet with you, I go outside in nature in my small backyard with no shoes on. And I walk around my backyard and I just let nature or the universe tell me what it wants from me. And I think so often that we allow others to project onto us what they think is right for us, that our minds get so clouded and then we're like, we don't know which direction to go. And so I think removing, I believe in being clear and removing people and things from our lives so that we can have those out-of-box experiences. And secondly, I would say really exposure, right? And being around different people and people that may align or does align with what you're thinking. Because there's nothing worse than being around like your friends or people who you think are your friends and colleagues, and they're like, no, Angela, you can't do that. You need that, not that you need that assurance or that validation, but you just want to have that thing that like that tells you that you can. And I think a lot of times, specifically as a Black woman, we've been told that we can't. We've been told that, oh yeah, stay at that job for 20 years. Don't say anything, don't rock the boat. And I think that now the tables are turning, as we're seeing in the workspace. It's like, no, this is not right. This is inequitable, or I can find another job. or start a business. So I think that having clarity and being in nature helps that. And being alone. I think that, I used to do these silent retreats where I would just not talk for like forever. And I can't believe that now. But I think that, just being alone and letting yourself come up with what you think you want to do before you make that big decision. So I think nature really helps. I think taking just a holistic approach to life in general, and not moving from one job to another job, but if that is what you feel like you need to do, but like, what is it that I really want to do? And not what do I want to do, but also what do I want for me? Personally, professionally, what does that actually look like? And I think until we write that down before the business plan, that it then drives where we want to go.
Okay. Yeah, there's something I do want to touch on again with that before I go to my next question. But you mentioned like moving people out of your life, moving things out of your life, and I don't think you meant it in like just stop talking to random people. What you meant was like there are certain questions that only you can answer.
That's right.
About what you want out of life, about what you want out of work. There's a lot of ways to make money. That doesn't mean you want to make money in all those different ways, or that you're going to be happy and satisfied and fulfilled making money in all those different ways, right? And so I think when you talk about just separating yourself and making those clear decisions, because too, like your seasons are going to change in life. What
Absolutely.
you may want, 10 years ago is not what you want today.
That's right.
And so having those times where you're like separating yourself and asking yourself the hard questions and writing it down and making it known, like, okay, these are things that I want. This is what I'm going to do to get there, holding yourself accountable. Those are not easy tasks, and I think really, even before this great resignation or whatever upheaval we're having in the workspace right now, both for entrepreneurs and people who work, for organizations, it started long before now. It really started, I think people came to understand like, okay, I thought what I wanted was a good job and, to have a steady income, but what I really want is to have a job that allows me to spend more time with my family or have a work schedule that allows me to spend more time with people that I love and doing other things besides working. Like, I think there's definitely, maybe a few generations ahead of me where, they didn't have hobbies. A lot of those people retired, they didn't have hobbies. They're like, my goal is to retire and travel because like they deprived themselves of those things for so long. Yeah. And I think now people are like, no, I want to have a life now and later.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, unapologetically doing that if you can, or making a plan to get there. And like you said, Angela, I think that's like you hit the nail on the head, is that like, I just forgot what you said, but you mentioned, gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm catching a blank. But you mentioned just kind of like, the way we remove people out of our lives. You mentioned, and how do you do that? And just having that clarity around that and taking the steps forward, because this didn't just happen. Right. It's just like I was just telling someone earlier yesterday of like, these steps that we think that we have to have the American dream. Or, why am I not married? Or why am I still single? And then you wake up and you realize like, oh my God, I'm like 40 and this is not happening to me. It doesn't necessarily mean anything is wrong. There isn't anything wrong. It's just that now you've taken a different avenue and said, what is the next chapter? What is the next phase of my life that, how do I want to live that? And I think that you do that and you do it unapologetically. So it's never like, oh, this just happened now. We've been people have been doing this for having these out of the box or aha moments for a while, but now it's just like, oh, I can work from home. I don't have to have have power, other people, controlling my schedule and power over me, or making me feel that they have power over me, or what am I good at doing? And I think that that's what's happening in the world, right now in which we live in, is that people are just like, I want to do something else. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay if I do that and take a pay cut. I'm okay if I do that and, not be at the company meetings, So, and I think that, I think it is a good thing. I think this great, if we want to call it the great resignation, I think it's a good thing. I think it is great that people are exploring who they want to be.
Yeah.
And making a path to get there. I definitely think that.
Thank you so much for watching and listening to the show. Whether you're a Day 1 fan or Day 100 fan, I'm so glad that you found Honey and Hustle and have decided to stick along for the ride. As a thank you, I wanted to give you a little gift that this show has so graciously given me: the ability to continue to connect with thought leaders, industry leaders, business owners, and other entrepreneurs no matter where I am. Link offers a digital business card that is a natural extension of my website and social media platforms that allows me to easily send people to strategic landing pages so they can learn a little bit more about me, the resources I offer, and how we can continue to stay connected. When you click the link below in the description, you'll get 15% off any of their wearables, phone taps, and hopefully the last physical business card you'll ever need. Thank you so much again for supporting the show and our show sponsor, Link. So going back to your original story and just some, conversation I've seen in the space that I really want to talk about now is diversity in the workplace. So I think when certain people, or when many people hear diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, they think, okay, we're going to go to these workshops and people are going to talk about their feelings, and then everybody's just going to be like, okay, I'm going to stop being racist, and then they're going to go back to work or something. Like something along those lines. Like, we're going to fix racism with the workshop and, a couple of, changes to our mission statement, and kumbaya, we're great to go.
Absolutely.
And I think really and truly, or we're going to hire like 2 more Black people and meet this quota and woo, we're all good. And it's like, that's not what it is. It has to be kind of on both ends. One, hiring diverse talent from age, gender, race, all the things.
That's right.
Not just race.
That's right.
And then it also has to be like, how are we creating an environment where these different types of people feel safe? They feel, that their voice is respected, and their experience is respected, and their perspective is respected. Say that 5 times fast. But but like, we have to do both ends of the work. And I still think there is a misalignment between organizations that think that hiring diverse talent is going to solve all their ills in the public sphere versus companies that understand that my organization is truly better because I've hired a diverse group of people who have diverse perspective, because that's going to strengthen our product and our ability to serve more people and what the world looks like today in reality. So can you talk to me a little bit about how you've been working with different organizations now since leaving that organization to do that sort of thing?
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know where to begin, but I would say first is that you can't have diversity without having inclusiveness, right? And you need both. So you can start hiring this mass amount of people, or maybe 2 people to meet your quota, but it's not going to get you, it's not going to be sustainable over a period of time. And I can say that it's very challenging work. It's very hard work because no one wants to do the work. And before I work with the client, I'm like, are you ready to do the work? Because it can't be surface level. It can't be that we just come out with the DEI statement. What are you going to actually do once you have people of different backgrounds and experiences come into your workspace? Are they able to thrive? And so my work consists of me basically having these discovery calls way before we get into the work. And so I think that it is really important for companies to start taking a step back and saying, not, oh, what's the next initiative? We automatically go to hiring. It's not time to hire. So maybe it is now to start in our organizational infrastructures. You have to start internally before you can start externally. So that's how I work with my clients, as to let's look at things internal first. Let's get your policies and procedures, your practices in place. Make sure that you're using the right language. You're using gender pronoun, whatever the right pronouns. Just using inclusive language, I would say. Or what does it look like if a person of color or a person of a different background comes into this organization and they're the only Black person, or they're the only person that is of a different race or a part of the LGBTQIA community. What does that look like? How are they going to feel? And so a lot of that just comes with organic conversations. And what I have found, Angela, is that leaders don't have time to read books. They don't want to read books. No. And I like them because I love to read, but they don't. It is my job to take what I have read and interpret it, or come to more of a, be strategic in how I communicate to them about race and how their organization needs to make this change. And so if anything, I would say that people that are doing this work is some leaders want to dive in, and then some leaders do not. And so you have to pick and choose, like, do I want to just keep working with the leader that doesn't want to dive in? Or do you say, I want, they're really thinking about that. I think you have to start internally. I think, well, first you have to work with leaders. And then secondly, you have to also do things internally first before you start diving into recruiting and training. I think those things are needed, but then how is it going to look 3 to 5 years from now? So a big part of my job also is kind of walking an organization through what does a 3 to 5 year strategic plan look like, and helping them come up with their objectives and their metrics, and then the drivers to get there, and then those action plans. Because a lot of companies have things on paper, but no one's doing it. And I think a stat just came out that like 63% of companies today have put a DEI statement together. But nothing has ever happened, And so I think you have to go in and look at that. You have to look at what performance management looks like within the organization. Who is actually being promoted? Who's actually been in this role for like 10, 15 years? So doing an organizational assessment is very helpful in doing this work, so that you can lead the organization into what a 3 to 5 year goal look like. And then after that, then what does that look like? Because it's not ending, and I don't want us to give up on this work, because what I'm seeing in this space is that a lot of leaders, like you said, we've hired our 2 Black people. We've done this. We checked the box, and also it's hard to have these conversations, right? Because people don't want to feel like they're well-intentioned people, but they're like, God, I'm racist or I'm a bad person. And I'm not saying that you are not. But what I am saying, I'm pointing to the data. And when we look at the data and we look at the numbers across your organization, it reflects this. And is it that you want to do something about it, or either you don't? And 90% of them are my clients do, but there are a lot of people that don't.
So let's take it back to the beginning. And I don't mean the beginning of like your life. I mean the beginning of like having a successful business. I think even now, even DEI is kind of changing. Now it's DEIB. I've seen that, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And there's nothing wrong with all these acronyms, but at the end of the day, what DEI truly boils down to is what every company, every successful company, in my opinion, is based on, which is having a group of people who are unified by a shared mission.
That's right.
And so, and they're all working together cohesively in their roles to achieve that mission. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to making people feel a sense of belonging in a workspace, what you really mean is you're paying them equitably, non-discriminatorily, right? So not paying men more than women for the same role, same scope of work, not paying, I know, pay equity is a sort of thing, but it adds to your sense of belonging. I think, especially now that more people are being comfortable with discussing pay, I think that is something that is helping that sense of belonging, because people know, mm-hmm. I know what this person made in this mm-hmm. role before me, mm-hmm. I know what this person is making at this company. Mm-hmm. I know that I can jump to this company at this role and make this money, so I know that I can start for myself and make X amount.
Yes.
I know what the market rate is for this service if I were to freelance or to contract. So I think pay equity is one thing that creates a sense of belonging. Having transparency within the workplace, like what are we doing now to move the company forward, and how can you be a part of that? And then two, what are some things that are important to not just me as the leader, but you guys as the team, mm-hmm. right? Because you're going to have different things that you've experienced in this space or in this work that may be different from mine, that may still be important to meet the needs of you and the people that we serve. So I think going back to, okay, if our mission truly with DEI work, with changing the workplace culture, elevating that to a space where everybody that we hire and everybody that we currently have on staff feels comfortable to have difficult conversations, to work through problems together collectively, to reach our goals, exceed our goals, and continue on forward. If you're starting with someone at the onset who's like, hey, I know that I am a Black woman, I know that I want to grow, let's say a tech startup or a startup of some kind, and I want to start at the onset with the people that I work with, creating a space where they feel like they belong and they feel safe and they feel, respected on the job. What are some things that you would tell people? And I know that's a deep question. You don't have to give me the whole gambit, but what are some things you would tell people who want to, from the start, understanding that this is a lifelong goal? I want to start, I don't want to have to bring in somebody 10 years later to tell me that I've been doing all these bad things. I want to start right now creating that space.
That is a deep question. I think that it's going to be just be human. I think that this humanistic approach and having organic conversations, I truly believe that it's just really saying, this is what I want to do, or this is what I see, and this is how I feel that we can get there. I think that the world is lacking that in this whatever DEI space. I really do not like using that term because it is about how do you make people feel valued, heard, and seen, and represented in organization and in these organizations. And the only way that we can do that is by having organic conversations and letting the conversation drive the next step. And I think that, I think the world, we're not talking to each other now. So you have people over here thinking one thing and the other people over here thinking another thing. So making sure that everyone is talking and not one specific group or the dominant group talking about certain things. I think that's the bulk of it, Angela. It's just really people want to be heard. And so I would just say, just have the conversation organically. I don't know if that really answered your question, but I think that's the start of it.
Yeah. No, it does. I think part of it is like, let's say sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Like, there has to be these checkpoints where you're asking, and not just at big checkpoints, like the George Floyd situation. I'm
Yeah.
talking like regular checkpoints where you're asking like, what are some things that are going on in your community that I may not know about? Or what are some things that are going on in your community that are of concern to you or that are exciting to you that I may not know about? Because I probably have no idea what the Latino community is doing this weekend or cares about right now in terms of hot topics other than immigration. Like, you know what I mean? Because I'm just not, a part of that community on the long run. Like, so it's hard to know everything about everyone and to think that, oh, because I have a Latino friend, I'm cool. Like, this is fine. Like, there's still some things that, you don't know that they may be internalizing and thinking about every day when they wake up and come to work.
That's right.
And so I just think I don't know. I don't have a formula. But.
I think, thinking on that, I think that, I think companies or a leader need to have the right people in the right place. And so often leaders specifically have people who think like them in their spaces, in their circle. So one of the things I would say is to bring people that are different into those new spaces so that you can gain those perspectives and start seeing like what is actually happening in the Black community, what's happening in the Latinx community. Let's not go to them when we need them, right? But there's an organic relationship. It just happens naturally. And so I would say that, the surroundings, a leader's surrounding makes the difference in this space. And then also, who do we have in position outside of that executive level space? Who do we actually have, actually carrying out what the leader wants or what the leader thinks that they want? Are those people connected to communities? Are those people connected to the voice of the employee? Or do they genuinely care? Or do we take, in corporate, I will say this, in corporate, there's a lot of surveys going on. Everybody does a survey, and I just dislike it, but what are the engagement strategies? Like what you're talking about of like, how do I actually go or employ my employees to kind of take those initiatives to have those conversations? And then how do I report back to that leadership team? So until those processes are kind of put in place, that is always going to be a challenge, that you're not going to get that those outcomes or those tangible outcomes that you feel that you're going to just think that right, as a leader. You're like, oh, well, we've been in Durham for 50 years. No one's come to us. And that's, well, no, I didn't come because I didn't know your door was open. And so I think that, it is if we can't get out there, if the leader can't get out there to know about communities and then you have to put someone in position to do that. So I think that's kind of like the starting point.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be, I guess, my last question too was, and I don't know the statistic for this, but to my understanding, having people of color, having queer people, having women at the C-suite level is like rare. You know what I mean? So, talk about surrounding yourself with people who can bring different perspectives and ideas to the table and different manners of executing on those ideas. It's not there right now. One of the things that people love to harp on is experience. We see it now. People love to say, well, are they experienced? What college did they go to? What were their scores? Like, who cares about that? How do I say it?
Yes, Angela, yes.
How do we get past this? Oh, I didn't know this. Are there any people who are...
Oh, God.
This day and age? Is that still a question?
Either you're in my house while I'm writing or you're like at a board meeting that I'm a part of, right? So I don't know where you are. I will say that, and I'll just use this as an example. I was recently just having a conversation with this organization, and some of those same things that you're hitting, like, oh, well, we want a diverse group of people to apply for this executive level position, but I don't know if they have the skills and the qualification. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, well, where are you posting and who are you connecting with? Because I know some very skilled and experienced people. So one of the things I have recommended, and I do recommend this for organizations, like we got to get to the point where we are, and I don't like this word either, redacting resumes, redacting the information or removing some of the information that brings that bias up in these interview search committees, because they're so formulaic in like, I want these years of experience. I want them to go to these same schools. Well, what if you didn't know all of this stuff? Would that person still be qualified for this position? And I think that change in that process will help, hopefully, to get those people, get other people into the door, to get better people in the door so that you can bring those different perspectives. I can tell you, Angela, even at the level that I was at, and I had a long way to go, it was still hard to get into the door. Because I didn't have, my pedigree wasn't that I went to some Ivy League school, and neither did they. And then you come into these spaces, but you want to come into these spaces with a voice, and then you want to come into these spaces with decision-making abilities, because what is happening, and it continues to happen, is that yes, I can diversify my board. Yes, I can diversify my executive team, but if I can't make decisions, if that person can't make decisions, then it's hurting the people that are within the organization. So I think when a leader or leadership wants to make change, that it will filtrate from the top. I mean, to start at the top all the way to the bottom. And so it's nothing worse than having a leader who says, well, I'm going to have Angela as the executive chief administrator, whatever that could be in this committee, but yet you don't have a voice. And that, I'm not sure if that's the best route to go.
Yeah.
So
something cosmetic, like they have a title.
Yeah,
they're there, you know.
And I would say that, we also, as the individual, I know for me, people have tried to recruit me for like a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer position. And I laugh, because why would I go into, I think it's great, but then when I look at your organizational chart, is it really realistic that I'm going to be that person to come in to make a change in your organization? Probably not. Yeah. So I think it's, going back to knowing yourself and being still and letting the universe kind of tell you where you want to go. It's like, no, I can't, that's a job bigger than me. Yeah. So I think, while we're in these spaces as people of color or people of different groups, that we have to start saying, can we actually make that change in these, or in here? How much time do I want to give to this company to get, even at the mid-level range? Yeah. But we need that pressure, and we need those companies who have employee resource groups, as people put these together, where they're, you got the LGBTQIA group, and then you got the ERG for Black people. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And while I think that they're great, is it just surface level, or are these, because ERGs and other groups, they can't make decisions. Right. And so when I see that, I think, gosh, it's such a fallacy. It's like, it's great because we're doing things, but you can't really make the decisions to make the integral change in the organization. So I think I probably said a lot there, but I got caught up, but that was good. That was good.
That's okay.
I got caught up, and you hit a nerve. You hit a nerve.
Oh, that's okay. Well, you know what? We are going to calm down now. We're going to allow you to finish your tea.
Okay.
And can you tell people where people can find you? I know you're on LinkedIn.
I am on LinkedIn, Carolyn Rhodes, Rhodes, or you can find me on my website, www.leadershipinequity.com. And those are the two places you can reach out to me for any questions or just wanting to know more about my work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Angela. So good to be here. Thank you for my cup.
Absolutely. Absolutely.